Good morning and welcome to Rising. We've got another great show for you today. Lindsey, today I will concede that we are in very complementary colors and actually have been all week, if you've noticed.
That means we're on the good birthday vibes.
Yeah.
We're on the same page.
We're vibing.
And you know, I know you don't believe in astrology and all that nonsense.
Oh my God. But I keep having co-hosts who do.
Can I just tell you?
Brianna, Kim, same way. Go ahead. Go ahead.
You're a Leo, I'm a Sagittarius,
Yeah.
and no matter how much you want to force it and fight it, we just get along. It just works.
Longtime viewers,
Peanut butter jelly.
This is a thing. This keeps happening. I'm always with people. I've learned to appreciate astrology a lot more than I would have.
It's a beautiful, fun thing. You don't take it too seriously, but you should enjoy.
All right, I'm on board with that.
Thank you. Coming up on Rising, private wealth seems to be an unofficial operating arm in President Trump's administration. I'll definitely be breaking all that down about all these donations that have come his way in my lens later on.
Plus, Charlie Kirk ally Blake Neff is breaking his silence on the many claims that Candace Owens, my favorite person, has been making about Turning Point USA and Kirk's death. It will be really interesting to talk about.
And Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro had some fiery words for Vice President Kamala Harris over what she wrote about him in her book. But first, Robby, what is on your radar today?
Can't wait to get to all of that. But first, denial is not just a river in Egypt. It's also a recurring segment on The View. Yesterday, the ladies discussed the Tim Walz welfare scandal, which has become a very big story indeed. It turns out that 80 or 90 people, most of them Somalian, stole $1 billion in welfare funds from the public, and the state's governor, Walz, ignored whistleblower reports that something was amiss, possibly because Walz and other top Democrats did not want to alienate Somali voters, since they're a big constituency in the state. Walz, of course, was Kamala Harris's pick for Veep, a choice that speaks to the, shall we say, very, very short vetting window. One might have thought that Democrats or Republicans would have noticed the welfare fraud story, but national media has only seized on it following an expose by conservative writer Christopher Rufo. But I digress. While many Americans are outraged by these revelations, the ladies of The View think that the right is merely directing hatred towards Somalians, akin to Trump and Vance's criticisms of Haitians. Let's take a look.
Every time that happens, he pulls out a race card. Mm-hmm. Last time it was the Haitians who were eating the pets, and now it's the Somalis in Minnesota, who, by the way, there's only 84,000 Somalis in Minnesota, and 58% of them were born in the United States.
Yes. And 87% of them are naturalized citizens.
Yeah. But one of my spies told me that he lost support with the Somali Minnesota voters over the Biden administration's handling of Gaza. So again, it's personal. Everything's personal with him.
Look, I'm sorry, but the story's nothing like the Haitian pet-eating story, which was, in fact, largely made up. It was wrong and shameful for national Republicans to echo it. This story, though, it's not made up. It's very, very real and very serious. Now, like the Haitian story, it would absolutely be wrong to engage in crude racial stereotyping about Somalians, the vast majority of whom committed no crimes. But the story itself is real, and it's damning. And it is a true indictment of Tim Walz's governance. That's where I want to focus, and that's where Republicans should keep it. To the GOP, I say, please avoid the tendency to paint with a broad racial brush. As conservative radio host Eric Erickson wrote on X, GOP, Christopher Rufo has handed you an 80-20 issue with the Somali fraud story, and the Democrats are now circling the wagons. Don't screw it up. By the way, making it a race issue will screw it up. I agree with him, indeed. There are already some signs this issue could get screwed up, as MyPillow CEO Mike Lindell has now indicated he wishes to run for governor against Mike Walz. Mike Lindell is, to put it nicely, very nicely, too extreme to win a general election. The GOP would like to run on a platform of good governance and repairing the damage to Minnesota that has occurred under Walz's watch. Then they'll need a sane, moderate, experienced candidate, not a conservative media bomb thrower. Please take note, GOP. Please listen to me this time. You usually don't, but I'd like it if you considered it this time.
So I want to start from the top. I know that you love to criticize the ladies at The View, my friends.
Your
but
friends.
I think
know I do. Where's Alyssa been?
Well, she's pregnant, so I'm assuming maybe she's taking a minute.
Good for her. Congratulations.
So the president at a cabinet meeting called Somali people garbage. And so you acting like we should just skip over that racist part of the conversation is problematic, right?
I said we should not engage in it.
Yeah, no, but the president engaged in it. So for them not to address it is not appropriate for the type of show they have. They have discussion on why this can go left based on historically how the president
it's not like
has.
the Haitian story, which was just a false accusation.
Yes, which is
these accusations are true.
Fine. So separate the two, but we can discuss that the president used ridiculous language to describe an entire community that's inappropriate, right? Saying garbage, right? That we can both agree on that, if you would like to agree. But separately from the story, that has been my biggest concern, that we want to demonize an entire community for what would be, I brought up the numbers yesterday, 0.25% of the entire Somali population in the U.S. So the representation of people that committed fraud in Minnesota doesn't even represent 1% of the Somali migrants in the U.S. But I want to talk about...
Not a significant percentage of Somalians committed fraud.
Yes.
But a significant percentage of people who committed fraud were Somalians.
In this particular situation. So according to CBS, this case was part of a larger scale trend that was happening during the pandemic. If we're talking about the $250 million that people were involved in, I think about 70 of the 80 people we're talking about were involved in this case that was COVID-19 fraud and was collecting funds inappropriately and using them the wrong way. But during the pandemic, you said that we won't have like $1 billion here to account for. 250 million of that is this biggest fraud case they were looking into years ago during the pandemic. Across the U.S., almost $1 trillion, CBS is reporting, was lost due to fraud. It breaks my heart too. So it was a terrible time. And when you think about what Minnesota people were doing, it's not this anomaly that was happening in Minnesota and that's it. It was literally like across the country, unfortunately, people were committing fraud and they all should be prosecuted. And many of these people in the fraud case that was happening during the pandemic have been prosecuted, and Walz has laid out all the ways that he's pursued these people and said at the time of the pandemic, it wasn't the right time for him to go worry about fraud when he was worried about trying to save people and following what the orders were coming from above.
I would like my governors to always be worried about fraud and like...
Yeah, but it's easy to say in a moment of a...
Well, that's where I want to focus.
International pandemic.
I think that reflects a really bad governance on his part. It's like we'll ask questions later. No, you got to ask questions now.
But he wasn't the only one. Across the country, fraud was happening. We said $1 trillion was lost. So blame every single Republican and Democratic governor that didn't do a good job at accounting for the fraud from U.S. and international individuals. Now, I'll give you that Tim Walz has a response for COVID that I'll accept because of the unprecedented times. But there are recent accounts, as recent as this summer, where new fraud was happening in Minnesota that I looked into from reading this article.
Well, he's still the governor.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. And so he cannot use that excuse.
He's going for a third term.
And he can't use that excuse that it was unprecedented times. There's actual stuff that happened in September and August that were fraud, I believe, of elderly people trying to find them housing assistance that was completely fraudulent. And so that accounts for the other people that we're talking about that's more recent. And so he has to come up with new responses other than unprecedented times, because right now and in August and September, we're not unprecedented. So he should respond to that and acknowledge that, yes, there were discrimination lawsuits that followed, which is why he might have been hesitant from Somali populations that were in this specific case.
Oh, okay, that's beautiful. They're going to commit fraud, and then if you try to call them out for that or prosecute them, they're going to say we're being discriminated.
The Feeding Our Future group had a discrimination case going towards. So you would be hesitant thinking that something is happening here where they're isolating one community.
So they're going to rob us and then weaponize our discrimination laws.
No, I think it should be thrown out. I think it should be thrown out. But that's what I'm saying. Like, all this was happening at once, which is why he might have had a slow response to the COVID incident. But the ones this summer, he should have a quick response and a quick answer as to why he wasn't looking into it. Because this issue has been boiling over for years, and just now, yes, like you said, the mainstream media is picking it up and paying attention.
Lindsey, you know that I am, by and large, a supporter of increased immigration.
Yes.
I am an outlier in that respect of people on the right.
Yeah.
People on the right want very little or no immigration at this point. And that's one of the more popular views of the GOP, is harsher limits on immigration. So I'm laser focused on incidents like this that I know will cause a backlash against immigration. And that is, again, that it's going to go to an 80-20 or 90-10 issue when people, I know not all of them were immigrants, but their parents immigrated here from Somalia. A substantial minority community comes here, causes great fraud, and then weaponizes our protections against discrimination to save themselves. That is going to make people want, okay, no more immigration from Africa, or no more immigration overall. And I am worried about that, because I think that would make us a poorer country, a worse off society. But that's going to take some policing of the bad actors among us so as to not poison people against immigration entirely.
And I agree, it's a problem, but we can't isolate one community just because of the bad actors that are several and few and far between. There's a very small amount of them. So that's the biggest issue for me.
Up next, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is accusing the New York Times of unfairly covering President Trump's age and health, of course.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent recently slammed the New York Times during an interview at the newspaper's annual Deal Book Summit.
Bessent accused the paper of having a double standard when it comes to their coverage of President Trump's health and says they never covered President Biden the same way. Take a look.
The New York Times is no longer the paper of record. You can't go, I read this article, like President Trump is slowing down, President Trump's mental capacity. It is 100% fake. You had what was one of the greatest scandals of all time, that the coverage of the Biden administration, Joe Biden's diminished capacity, and the cover-up.
And that's why it's probably fair to raise these questions.
Where was the New York Times? We just had a 3-hour cabinet meeting yesterday, Andrew. For 10 months, the Biden administration did not have a cabinet meeting.
Bessent was likely referring to an article published by the Times last week documenting Trump's public appearances in his second term. It reads, quote, in 2017, the first year of his term, Mr. Trump's scheduled events started at 10:31 a.m. on average. By contrast, Mr. Trump in his second term has started scheduled events in the afternoon on average at 12:08 p.m. The number of Mr. Trump's total official appearances has decreased by 39%.
Meanwhile, during that 3-hour cabinet meeting that Bessent mentioned earlier, some on the left suggested Trump was falling asleep. CNN's Jake Tapper suggested that it shouldn't come as much of a surprise if Trump is tired. Take a look.
He did look a little sleepy in that cabinet meeting. I don't know if he was dozing off or what, but...
Or listening intently.
And does that what it look like? Does it look like I'm listening intently?
Yes, it does. And I can keep talking if you want me to. I'll talk right on through this.
Look, he's 79 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, like, this is not abnormal for a 79-year-old to be sleepy.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt spoke on the matter afterward, saying that, quote, President Trump was listening intently and running the entire 3-hour-long cabinet meeting.
Yeah, I saw what they were talking about. I see why you say it looked like maybe he was sleeping, but I think he just does this thing where he's listening, where he's, like, his eyes look closed. I think that's what it was. I don't think he was sleeping, but he can be tired. He works very hard. He flies all over the world. He doesn't sleep well and never has. Look, I'm fine to have people keep scrutinizing his health and well-being. He is old, and in my view, I have noticed, I think he's slowed down just a little bit. I think he has.
Normal for a 79-year-old.
But, like, people are getting conspiratorial about that. Like, the paying attention to his hand. Well, he had an injection or something. That's why there was a discoloration on his hand. You can't say, there is no comparison to Joe Biden. Joe Biden, to Scott Bessent's point, did not have a cabinet meeting for 10 months. Cabinet couldn't get a hold of him. He would do short, little conversations during the small part of the day where he was fully awake and alert, and other times had no idea what was going on. Trump, they sheltered him from media interviews, from press interactions. Trump sits still regularly, periodically, for long, far-reaching interviews. He fields questions from reporters on the plane. He's talking to people in all sorts of different contexts. He's still, it's not even in the same ballpark. The level of access the people and the press have to Trump compared to Joe Biden. You would know if something had gone seriously wrong with his cognition. And we should be laser focused on that. But the hypocrisy from the media, like, oh my God, now they're really, really paying attention to the age and fitness of the president. Come on, people.
Okay, well, the health and the fitness of the president has always been a U.S. but also a global concern.
Well, not always, not for the last 4 years.
Just because of the demands of the job, it should be, right? And let's say that the New York Times does accept the criticism from Bessent, right? Who said, you didn't do a good job covering Biden's health. Well, now they're stepping up to the plate, and they're doing a fantastic job covering the health. No, don't say wow.
Great example
they're doing
of learning from
They're learning from mistakes. So why are you mad? They literally are doing what you've asked them to do. They're looking at a 79-year-old man and saying,
They're looking at a 79-year-old.
He started at 12:08 p.m. No, he started later. He's doing less public appearances. Let's do our due diligence and follow through to see if this man, he got an MRI that he won't release the results from. He just tells everybody he's just fine. But I haven't gotten an MRI recently.
Biden had cancer.
So it's just, we don't know that that's true and he knew about it. We don't know that.
Yes, we do.
No, we don't know that for sure. You can't just assume.
He absolutely knew about it and they absolutely covered it up, but believe whatever you want.
And I also want to go back to listening intently like this. Come on now. I'm not accepting that. He was falling asleep. There's been several pictures and videos of him like kind of doing something like this. And even as he appeared to be falling asleep in one of the times, I was reading in the New York Times and they were saying that Secretary of State Marco Rubio was describing him, and you know he loves the praise, as the, quote, only leader in the world who could help to end the Ukraine war. And so he should have been wide awake in that moment to say yes, because he's leading the meeting.
Maybe he tires of all this flattery.
No, well, he should be. He doesn't get tired of flattery. We know that.
So
if he was wide awake, when somebody's giving you a grandiose compliment like that, saying you're the only leader in the world, you're going to still listen intently. Yes, I am. Like,
you've never fallen asleep on camera, Lindsey?
I've fallen asleep in a whole meeting, but I also am not the president.
Yeah.
So I've fallen asleep before.
And you're a young 29-something.
Yeah.
Your birthday yesterday.
You're right. I just turned 29.
Yeah.
Have you fallen asleep in a meeting? Why are you making excuses when you didn't like Biden being? And the criticism of for 4 years calling Biden.
I just went to a meeting here to describe our new.
No, I know what you're going to say.
AP, the system we use to program the scripts, and I was so exhausted, and I kept doing this while we were listening to how it was going to be done.
You don't find the hypocrisy of President Trump referring to President Joe Biden as Sleepy Joe for 4 years and beyond, and then actually possibly falling asleep in many, or at least the meeting we just saw recently. That's not hypocrisy to you?
No, because I didn't begrudge.
He literally is sleeping.
I would not have begrudged Biden just being tired a couple times in meetings because he travels a lot, and he's like, that was not the issue. The issue was that even with enough sleep, he was barely lucid a lot of the time. And they knew that because they stopped having him do public appearances and media interviews and meetings with his cabinet. The cabinet not being able to get a hold of you is really, really bad. And they covered all that up. That's what, it's not that he was tired. It's okay to be tired. They have very demanding jobs. We all know this. If you fly and you change time zones, it can be disorienting for young, perfectly healthy people. So there's no disrespect to that. I mean, they get to travel in relative comfort, but it's a lot to ask. It's not just I don't care if you're tired. It's the age and the fitness. And I've not seen evidence that he still seems by and large.
So you're getting the discoloration in the skin, the MRI, the falling asleep in the
He got an injection.
I know, but you just swipe over it. And it's like, if the New York Times is doing a really astute journalism and taking the time out to cover some of these health instances that you brought up during Biden's presidency that they neglected to cover.
If they really knocked it out of the park with Biden, really, then it would be. Then I'd say, well,
they have to start somewhere. You always never like to start with Republicans. They're starting right now. Why can't they start? No, they're starting right now, so they can continue to have this type of journalism, understanding the demands of a presidency, and continue to cover this really thoroughly. And I really hats off to the New York Times for taking the time out to cover this intense story about a possibly sleepy president that we want to make sure can do his job. This is a really intense job. And, at 36% approval rating, he really has to be ready and prepared or equipped for it, or maybe pass the torch to.
You know how I feel about the elderly in roles of prominence in government? Not very strongly. So the broader point that we should stop voting such elderly Americans into power over us is one I agree with. But that's more of a Democratic problem than a Republican problem.
Coming up, the Charlie Kirk Show producer, Blake Neff, is addressing Candace Owens' claims about Kirk's death. We're going to talk about all that next. Don't go anywhere.
Producer of the Charlie Kirk Show, Blake Neff, broke his silence and blasted Candace Owens, rejecting her claims surrounding Kirk's death. Neff wrote on X, "For the past 3 months, we've received a flood of questions about Candace Owens and her claims attacking Charlie's closest friends. For 3 months, we preferred to remain silent, but the attacks have not stopped."
In the latest episode of The Charlie Kirk Show, Neff delivered this response. Let's take a listen.
Candace has mentioned several times that the ball is in our court. So here's what is going to happen. In the near future, there will be a live stream here in Phoenix where we address in a clear and comprehensive way the claims and accusations, the false accusations that have been made against Charlie's family, friends, and the people here at Turning Point. We plan to walk through everything carefully and thoroughly. If Candace is available, we would sincerely welcome her participation in that.
Owens in the past has claimed that Charlie Kirk's murder was part of a broader international assassination plot, including alleged Egyptian agents, and the arrest of the alleged shooter, Tyler Robinson, was a cover-up. Owens responded to Neff's challenge. Here she was.
They at long last issued a public invitation or a challenge. I'm not sure what it is, but I accept. okay? Quite literally, all we have ever asked for were sensible answers to our basic questions about what transpired on September 10th.
Whoa.
Yeah, fascinating. I think I reluctantly I agree with Blake Neff's strategy here. I'm someone who's I reject the don't platform arguments. I think it is good to engage in debate idiotic and insane perspectives like those represented by Candace Owens. Candace has accused everyone, usually indirectly, usually using vague language so that she is not directly saying something that is libelous, but she implies through her just asking questions kind of milieu that Turning Point, Israel, Erica Kirk, and others were involved in Charlie Kirk's death, and that the suspect in custody, for which there is overwhelming evidence that Tyler Robinson, is the shooter, including motive to kill Charlie Kirk, that he is not the real killer or that there are other people involved. He is some kind of fall guy. These are sensational claims for which she has presented not a shred of evidence. Yet people, I don't know why people find value in what she says. She's a complete idiot. Good luck to them. They should, come prepared for her usual thing. Well, she'll say, well, isn't it interesting that X? And then she'll pivot and blah, blah, blah. But I hope something useful comes out of it.
I'm not a Candace Owens fan, but the amount that you don't like her makes me want to actually defend her a little
God.
bit. I'm like, geez, okay.
No, it should be that because I usually try to find something, I usually try to see some good in all sorts of different perspectives. This is the one person for which I can find not a redeeming thing about them. And so that should tell you something.
Okay, so
because if there was anything there I valued, I would
park
tell
that,
you.
because I'm not spending my day defending Candace Owens. But what I'm excited to see is this conversation. I think that for Turning Points to rest on what the organization says that it stands for would be to invite Candace Owens to the table, right? If she was even an associate of Charlie Kirk and wants clarity on anything, then I think her audience, which is millions of people, also follow along with her. Some maybe to hate watch, but there are at least a large swath of them that really want the answers alongside her. And so to watch her join this conversation with Neff and them to invite her there and for her to accept that shows to me the brilliance of the digital age that we're in. Because in most cases, you would have executives getting involved about what this conversation looks like. It would be too structured. It would almost be like Marjorie Taylor Greene on The View.
Right.
It was nice and neat and whatever. But this is completely live stream and a little bit could get
Or
unhinged.
are they trying to lure her into a trap? Because remember, she has alleged that there's a vast conspiracy to assassinate her involving the French government and Israel, because it always involves Israel. So maybe they're luring her into a trap to assassinate her.
And on the live stream.
Because they're complicit too.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
You're going to be watching this, and we're going to be talking about it right here on Rising. So I'm excited
most definitely.
to see this. Looks like President Trump is inviting America's wealthiest to fund his presidency. I'm going to talk about that next in my lens. Stick around.
All right, Lindsey, what's in your lens today?
Money, money, money. So here's the truth I keep coming back to. Under President Trump, the presidency isn't just public service. It's big business. And the customers with the most access are the ones with the biggest checks. Private wealth has basically become an unofficial operating arm of this administration. Billionaires aren't just donating to ideas they believe in. They're funding policies, programs, and even physical spaces that shape Trump's presidency itself. And the benefits are tax breaks, proximity, influence, and they aren't exactly subtle. Take Michael Dell's historic gift this week. On paper, his $6.25 billion donation to, quote, seed Trump accounts for kids sounds generous. It will put $250 into 25 million child investment accounts. But if you look a little closer, the donation doesn't go through Congress, doesn't require bipartisan compromise, and expands a benefit lawmakers didn't approve: $1,000 for newborns starting next year. Now, don't get me wrong, I think donating money to children is a lovely thing, but I do think Congress should be involved in that decision making. Even Dell's role is framed not as civic contribution, but as dividend of policy. Check out President Trump discussing it himself.
This gift is being made possible by the largest tax cuts in American history, which our Republican majorities passed earlier this year.
And the White House isn't shy about the point they're making. White House spokesman Kush Desai told Axios in a statement, quote, "Thanks to President Trump's leadership, America's richest billionaires are giving away their money to make America great again. From investing in Trump accounts for our children's future to supporting our troops, Democrats could only dream of accomplishing this." Of course, we've seen this before. GOP mega donor Timothy Mellon wrote a $130 million check to cover troop salaries during the government shutdown, which amounted to about $100 per service member. Again, a private donor stepping in where government couldn't or wouldn't. But donations aren't just underwriting public programs. They're underwriting Trump's world. His 2025 inaugural committee shattered all records, raising $245 million, nearly triple what he raised in 2017. More came from million-dollar donors than most inaugurations raised in total. His transition fund was funded by a roster of billionaires, cabinet picks, and his future appointees. Now his 250th anniversary Army Parade, corporate sponsors with deep financial and political ties to Trump, Palantir, Coinbase, Oracle. Ethics lawyers warned it could create the appearance that the U.S. government endorsed the brands of Trump insiders. And now the new White House ballroom that Robby loves, a 90,000 square foot project replacing part of the East Wing, financed by Trump's own money plus corporate donors, many of whom have business before the administration right now. The price tag is creeping toward $300 million, but JP Morgan Chase declined to contribute, with CEO Jamie Dimon explaining he couldn't risk the perception of, quote, buying favors that might create problems with, quote, the next DOJ. That should tell you everything you need to know. Even Trump seems comfortable openly shopping new ideas to his wealthiest friends, including a Triumph Arc near the Lincoln Memorial. And then there's the crypto piece, where the line between public power and private profit gets really blurry. Back in May, Trump hosted the highest paying customers of his personal cryptocurrency business at the White House. A sitting president giving VIP access to customers of his own company is already a red flag. Then came the pardon of Changpeng Zhao, the billionaire co-founder of Binance, who had pleaded guilty to violating anti-money laundering laws, served 4 months, and then paid a $50 million fine. But Zhao is worth nearly $80 billion. His exchange has promoted a stable coin issued by a crypto firm backed by the Trump family. And Trump later said on 60 Minutes that he didn't know who Zhao was. Look, where there's this much smoke, at minimum, we can acknowledge that somebody is actually lighting a match. Now, some conservatives say this is efficiency, private money stepping in where government is slow or ineffective. But there's a bigger question here. When wealthy patrons fund the presidency itself, its programs, its ceremonies, and even its buildings, who does the government ultimately answer to? Because the more politics start to look like a VIP club, the fewer seats the public actually has inside.
Isn't it a problem that the CEO of JP Morgan doesn't think he can make a contribution to this public works project because a future Democratic administration would come down on him for that? Isn't that the real problem here? That a Democratic DOJ would punish you for contributing to the White House renovation?
I don't take it that way. I take it as he would say no to a Democratic administration as well, because a Republican administration.
Well, I think it's bad either way.
No,
I think the weaponization
apolitical
of government is bad.
Yeah, and I think that as the CEO of a major corporation like that, he's trying to stay apolitical because he's doing business. He's not trying to get in the fray of politics.
It shouldn't be political to give to the White House ballroom. The White House is going to be occupied by members of both parties.
No, there's several initiatives
building
that are public, like how we talked about the Dells yesterday. It's a beautiful thing to give to kids, and Chase has many charities that I'm aware of, right? But that doesn't mean that they need to get involved with President Trump's charity that he's actually touting as a thing that Republicans pushed through because of some tax cuts, and the reason why it opened up this door for him to fund children's private accounts that'll grow for them. This is all beautiful, but he's trying to do it to give himself an account that's named after him, so he can go down in history as
changing lives. Well, he likes to put his
lives.
name on things.
Okay, but that's what I'm saying. Chase doesn't have to be involved with that. And so Dell is choosing to be involved. It's noble of what it can actually get accomplished. But this is something that needs to go through Congress. And so the president likes to skip over those steps and take money from multiple people.
The White House renovation is something that needs to go through Congress?
No, that needed to go through the board that generally clears projects like that. And we talked about that in detail, how he skipped over them or fired half of them, right? That's a whole different issue. But I'm talking about the many ways that people that have business before President Trump tend to pay him or pay into the government in some way and then get their business handled how they want, right? It's a lot of shaky business practices that I spent about 7 minutes discussing. And so you can't lump them all into this Dell project or talk about just the renovations. I want you to address it all. You don't think anything's wrong with the crypto relationships that we're seeing in the government? You don't think anything's wrong with the fact that he has relationships with people that have money, projects and initiatives before him, and he's having relationships where they're sending money to him? You don't think anything's wrong with any of these relationships? You just think it's all fine and the president should do this?
No, I didn't say that. I think the business of America is business, and America our regulation should be friendly to prosperity and to people investing in America and creating value in the marketplace. The thing I dislike them very most is one firm or one industry trying to get an advantage over the other by bribing the government. If that's what's going on, I'm very much against it. If they're just supportive of Trump, because under Trump, unlike under Democrats, under Trump, there's generally permissivity and allowing, there's less government regulation. It's firms setting their own rules, which is the better way I want it to be. So they are supporting Trump, because if they were to support Democrats, then you end up with Elizabeth Warren and Lena Khan and others who want to destroy big business, want to destroy business entirely, think billionaires shouldn't exist, think crypto should probably be regulated out of existence. I think that's Elizabeth Warren's plan. They can't even exist under a Democratic rule. You saw the tech executives learned. I remember when Mark Zuckerberg, before Elon Musk was Republican, Mark Zuckerberg was a partisan Democrat. Tim Cook, all these people were much more supportive of the Democratic Party than they were of the Republican Party. And what they learned is that that's a waste of our time and effort to try to cozy up to Democrats, because they're trying to destroy us. They want to regulate us out of existence. They think a big, successful organization is a policy failure. They think Amazon is a bad thing. Amazon, which has mastered the art of meeting human need, should be broken up and destroyed because some of its workers don't like working there. Maybe they should work somewhere else then. That's the ideology of the Democratic Party. So eventually all those people got smart, and they said, you know what? We should be Republicans. We should be with the Republican Party, because the Republican Party got mad at us when we censored Republican speech, as Facebook did, but that was the government was making us do that anyway. We'll say that, we'll make the case, we'll stop being mean to Republicans, and they'll let us be unregulated, and that's the deal that was struck, and I think it's basically the correct deal for America. So that's where we are.
But I think you're oversimplifying, because a lot of times these big businesses have the money to pay to lobby to argue some of their points and what they like to accomplish. But then there are the smaller people that work for those corporations and that don't have the money to pay President Trump in the way that he's getting paid by donating big sums of money to initiatives that he cares about. But their voices should still be heard. The government is supposed to represent everybody, not just big businesses. And so a lot of times when you look at all the allies that the president has made and who's putting money before him and what initiatives that he wants to move forward, then you're like, okay, well, this is a money game. So what about the average American that can't be in this conversation?
The average
that
American
works at Amazon in the factories
better.
and just wants to be treated better by the unions and is arguing those points. So maybe there's a balance between an Elizabeth Warren perspective. Maybe she doesn't want to get rid of Amazon completely, but she just wants workers to not be treated unfairly.
My view is
and so they should, that's what the government can do, is work together
and demonize the wealthy and the successful ends up helping the poor and less well off. No program that sets out to do that ends up making things better. You can bring down the top earners. You can't lift up the bottom that way. That's my view.
Well, we're just going to agree to disagree.
Okay.
Up next, Governor Josh Shapiro has some choice words for VP Kamala Harris. We'll be right back after this. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro went off on former Vice President Kamala Harris after learning what she wrote about him in her book, 107 Days.
In a recent interview with The Atlantic, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro was asked about his thoughts on the matter. Harris wrote that Shapiro was more interested in the role of vice president than in helping her beat Trump, that Shapiro inquired about featuring Pennsylvania artists in the vice presidential residence, and insisted he would want to be in the room for every decision that Harris might make.
Now, Shapiro responded, telling The Atlantic, quote, "That's complete and utter bleep. I can tell you that her accounts are just blatant lies. I mean, she's trying to sell books and cover her bleep."
Shapiro, who could be a Democratic nominee for president in 2028, I'm betting he will be, told the outlet that Democrats will regain power by courting Trump supporters as opposed to focus on battling him.
Meanwhile, Kamala Harris has left open the possibility that she could pursue the Democratic presidential nomination for a third time. This was, you good?
Go ahead.
This was drama because I read the article, and the writer of this article at The Atlantic has interviewed Josh Shapiro multiple times and said that multiple times when this question has come up over the last year, he's been very polished and predictable about his answer to why Kamala didn't pick him and how he feels about her. But this time, for some reason, maybe he woke up on the wrong side of the bed or had a different mood, and that's me just saying what I might feel about it. But he was ready to talk about it. And it's probably because of the accusations in the book, he'd read them enough to be like, no, I completely disagree with that. That's untrue. He says that a lot of what she's doing is selfish, petty, and zealous. And he feels like she's trying to sell books, like he said. But he also says some things that are interesting to me in this article, that he's very sympathetic to people who did vote for Trump. He said that he thought that Kamala was just a weak candidate completely, which I thought was interesting because he really, it seemed, wanted to be her vice president with the intention, the understanding that he would be president in the future after that. But he didn't think that she was the best option in the first place. He also believes that a lot of Trump voters felt ignored, and that if he looks at how he's won Pennsylvania, at 30% of voters in Pennsylvania also voting for him, and he knows that he has that, I guess, what you call duality to be able to work within both parties, that he's enough of a person that's a leader that people are like, okay, he's not super liberal, but he's somebody who we want in the White House at this time.
He has something going for him. He got elected in Pennsylvania.
Right.
And I'm sorry, getting elected in Pennsylvania is the entire game.
And I meant 30% of Trump voters in Pennsylvania voted for him.
So he did something she can't do. She did not win the state of Pennsylvania. It's the must-win state. So, yeah, he gets... And also, she was picked at the last minute. She didn't win anything. She didn't go through the process the normal way. So... Yeah, I don't think it's so offensive that he said, I would like to be in the room when decisions are made.
Well, no, come on.
She needs him more than he needs her.
No one says that to the person that's supposed to be president. Like, start naming things that you want to do. Like, if you and I are running and I'm going to be the lead of the ticket and you're going to be vice president, you can't just say, I want to be in every... That's not how your role goes.
She wanted a patsy vice president who wasn't going to overshadow her in any way. Hillary Clinton wanted the same thing. Both of them, picked forgettable men named Tim, and both of them lost. They needed star power to invigorate those campaigns, and they made awful choices. Kamala Harris picked someone who would have been embroiled in a welfare fraud scandal.
Oh, yeah, that would have been crazy.
It would have been crazy. And it's Josh Shapiro. Look, if Josh Shapiro was a far left radical, it wouldn't matter. I would still think he should be on the ticket because he's the governor of the must-win state. He has a proven track record of winning in the state you have to win. If you win Pennsylvania, you're probably going to win the election. If you don't, you're almost certainly not. That's it. There's no further consideration to make. That is the number one criteria. So the idea that it wasn't automatically him is, frankly, offensive.
So what I want to talk about really quick is the idea that your vice president should be a superstar. Historically, that's never the case. President Trump picked J.D. Vance, who we know has superstarish qualities because of how outspoken he is. But when you look at Obama, Biden was not a superstar. He very much was somebody who was going to cooperate and go along with things.
I think it was to make people...
Cheney wasn't a superstar, right? He was very assertive and very powerful, but he certainly wasn't a superstar. He kind of kept quiet. And we learned about that relationship, but he wasn't a star. And so you're saying pick somebody with star power. That's usually not what they go for.
No, I said pick the governor of Pennsylvania.
Well, just him. Not somebody who just randomly named Tim from another. That's what you're saying. This was too random and obscure. They should pick somebody who at least could hold some weight. Oh, only Shapiro. There was no other option. Not even Mark Kelly, who has super big name recognition. Arizona was super important.
Pick the governor of Pennsylvania.
That's it. I thought, if anything, Mark Kelly would have been an even good choice as well.
But he's not the governor of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, but
you have to win Pennsylvania. That decides the election. So you should, if the governor of Pennsylvania is of your party, you should pick that person, right? It's just, if it adds 0.05% of your vote tally in Pennsylvania, you've dramatically increased your odds of winning the election. There's no other consideration. Historically, the vice president was picked for regional considerations to balance a ticket because our political parties were more factional. There was a southern faction of the Democratic Party and a northern faction for the Republican Party, so they would pick... often from a swing state. Often Ohio is overrepresented on the presidential ticket, the vice president and the president's side, because historically Ohio was an important swing state for a long period of time. Ohio is no longer a swing state. Now the swing state is Pennsylvania, so it should also be overrepresented in our choices, but it's not because people keep making dumb choices. I don't know Cheney didn't add anything electorally to the ticket. I think Bush picked him, frankly, because he just liked Cheney. Obama picked Biden to have someone with experience on the ticket who was older and who had experience in foreign policy. Obama perceived that that's the weakness that the American people were going to see in him, his lack of experience on foreign policy. So he picked someone of that. It was not regionally balancing it, but it was, and maybe, frankly, to make, if he worried people wouldn't vote for a black man, well, now there's a white man on the ticket. That probably entered into their calculation.
There's something else that I know is going to rally you up from this article. He talked about the fact that Kamala is a lot to blame for the fact that she was quiet during Biden's cognitive decline, and that he thinks that if it was an existential threat in the way that he feels that it was, then she needs to cover. That's why he's saying cover her behind in that tweet that I read, is because she is basically, she's implicit in all this by allowing Biden to go on this long and not just like not ending that first term and saying that outwardly to everyone, like, no, it doesn't have to be me, but he can't run again. And just throwing the party in disarray, because she should have known, he's saying. Even though we talked about earlier how a lot of cabinet meetings didn't happen and how he was isolated, we know now from the book by Jake Tapper that Jill Biden was very much the leader of that ship of protecting him and keeping him away. But I'm assuming Kamala at least saw him more than most people, and I'm assuming that Josh Shapiro feels the same way that I do, that if everyone felt so strongly in the Democratic Party that Trump was going to bring down the world to the end of times, then everybody should have screamed on top of their lungs and said, this can't go, Biden can't run again.
Yeah, maybe she should have tried to win. And by trying to win, I mean pick the governor of Pennsylvania. It's really that simple. It's not. Sometimes they overthink it, overcomplicate it. She must have really not liked him in the meeting.
But to know that somebody really wants to be the main person on the
ticket. What, he wanted to put
that
Pennsylvania art in the? Oh my God, what a sin!
No, that he wants to be in every meeting to me would have been the biggest thing. Like, I'm the president. I'll let you know which meetings you need to be into. That's how all presidencies work, right? The president.
Well,
makes
that's how
decisions.
she was treated by Biden. So maybe that's how she was conditioned to think it should go. Up next, Olivia Nuzzi appears to break down when discussing her new book about her relationship with RFK Jr. Yeah, more of that story. We'll be right back. Former New York Magazine writer Olivia Nuzzi recently released her tell-all book titled American Canto. The book goes into detail on her alleged sexting scandal with Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Nuzzi lost her job when reports of the scandal came to light last year and has largely stayed out of the public eye since then.
But now with the release of her book, Nuzzi has been doing more media appearances. Here she was on the Bulwark podcast getting emotional about how she was afraid when the news of the scandal broke.
Well, I lost my job, right? I was fired. Right. I was fired and I was in hiding and I was afraid.
Scared? Were you scared? Yeah.
I was terrified. Yeah.
Of
what? I mean, I write in the book about, I was terrified of the man I did not marry. And I was very worried about people knowing where I was. And
I'm sorry.
After briefly pausing the interview to gather herself, Nuzzi continued.
I was just scared in general. And I felt like I felt very vulnerable in general. And, it was very clear to me by the time I made it out here that no one was going to protect me, right? That it seemed as though no one really had any boundaries.
In the book, Nuzzi says she offered advice to RFK Jr. as he weighed his decision to ultimately suspend his presidential campaign and endorse Donald Trump for president in the 2024 election. She also claims he was using the psychedelic drug DMT during this time. For his part, RFK has denied claims that he was he denied claims entirely that he was romantically involved with Nuzzi in any way. This story.
This is like so much drama.
I know, and possibly no real person cares about it, and maybe it's just media insidery stuff.
Well, I think the bigger thing for me is the journalism aspect, right? So if you're doing a job of reporting on somebody and then you have all this information that you release in your tell-all, but
it's not really a tell-all. It does not tell all.
Well, tell little. Yeah, I know people were criticizing that. But it's just like your job was kind of to share the information that you gathered, like we talked about in that Atlantic article with Josh Shapiro. Over months of talking to him in different conversations, you gathered his actual feelings about Kamala. Like, the job of a reporter is kind of to get that in there. So now when we're having this, all the criticism of what's going on, like, well, once you put a book out, you're basically asking for people to critique it.
I agree with that. I think that's the issue. I Again, I've said this. I know her a little bit. She's gone through something. She lost her job. She got a new one. I don't know that she's going to hang on to this one. I feel bad for her on some level, and I want to give her her privacy, really, and not talk about this, but she wrote a book and is doing a media tour about it. I think it would have been better to not do that, but she made the choice to do that, and then and this affair involves a very powerful, important person, politically relevant, and she was a political journalist. She was and is. She got a new position as a political journalist.
Right.
We can't not ask questions that she's clearly uncomfortable asking and is not being totally forthright about. So she would be entitled to just not talk about this, but she didn't choose that route. So we have to ask these questions that then it feels like, well, you're trying to, get somebody when they're down. It's uncomfortable to do it. It's just uncomfortable to watch. I feel very uncomfortable, but I don't know what else she brought that on it by writing the book.
And in her defense, just
she
to
should have
share,
waited
no,
years
but
and then written.
maybe, but also there's a criticism like, why are all the thought pieces not about RFK right now? Why are they about, like, I know she wrote the book, but now we have some information.
She's talking, and Ryan Lizza, her ex, is talking.
Yes, he brought up
who's the only person who's not talking? RFK Jr. And it goes to show you that there is a power in silence. He just said, I didn't do it. I don't know what you're talking about.
His wife.
And that's that.
By RFK's wife's disposition, I think that there's a lot of friction there. I don't know that she believes that he didn't.
He's a Kennedy. It was probably raised on that mindset that when you screw up, as many Kennedys have in the history of time, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't do it, and that's that. And is there a power in just shutting up?
Yeah, but I think there still could be.
I think there's a
pieces
lesson
about
there
what
for
RFK
people
may
who
or
try
may
to
not
post through their canceling or their scandal or their controversy. Just don't say anything at all. Is
that your route?
The right approach.
Sometimes.
Well, if I was doing like crisis PR advising, that's what I would tell you to do if that's my role. My role is as journalist, so my role is to do the opposite, is to, advise you to do what Tim Miller's doing in that discussion. No, get you to say more. Our role is the role of the police interrogator. We want the suspect to keep talking. That's why the police always get you to say something incriminating, because confession is good for the soul, and people want to reveal. It's not useful to do so. If I was advising you as your defense attorney, I would say, just shut up. That does it for us on Rising Live. Look out for more exclusive YouTube content coming your way later today, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe to The Hill's YouTube channel so that you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we're now available anywhere you listen to podcasts. See you later.